Hello, welcome to today's edition of Route 664, The Road to Human Kindness. I'm Les Winston, and I'm the chairman and president of the Endow American Network Foundation, and I am an endowment engineer, and we are in the endowment engineering season. That begins at the last quarter of the year. September 30th is the end of the earnings season, that you get an idea what you're going to have for the year, what you're going to be doing, whether you have any tax consequences, and that's when you should be consulting an endowment engineer. Endowment engineers can help you work with your funny money. You know, they can change your tax dollars into serious dollars that you can spend, and you can have a terrific way of raising your endowment for the future. That's a very important aspect of what we're doing. Endowment engineering means we're going to engineer an endowment for you that's going to be able to support you for as long as you live, that you won't outlive it, and that you'll be able to live the way that you are living while you're working and while you're, so nothing really changes. We want you to be able to go from one position to the next without a break. Retirement has changed today. It's a completely different world. A lot of people want to find things to do in retirement, and in order to do that, you need to have the resources to do it, and that's why creating the largest endowment that you can for yourself is very important. But an endowment engineer also engineers endowments for the community. And that's what we create. When we create your endowment, we also create the endowment that you're going to leave behind that's going to support things that you want to support in the community. And that's really an important part of the process. But while we're in this tax planning season, and I think it affects everybody, but it has more of an effect on people who are in the upper income brackets, and the upper income brackets is generally represented by executives and professionals, people who are earning a lot of money, and they have tax bracket issues that they want to deal with. My guest today is Melody Brady. Melody is a CFP. She is the founder of Beechmont Financial, and I wanted to talk to her today about planning for professionals and executives. How are you, Melody? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yes. So we're dealing with a different breed when we deal with executives and professionals, and there's a difference between them, obviously. People who are the leaders, the corporate leaders in the country today, they are significant earners. How do you deal with them now as we get towards the end of the year, get into this, what I call the tax planning season?
Yes, the end of the year is very important. It's what sets you up for less surprises, I would say, come April of next year when you have to reconcile everything that you've earned for this year.
Mm-hmm.
So for a lot of executives, this is a time where a lot of them will get their stock options. They might get big year-end bonuses. We want to make sure that they're maximizing their 401k contributions and anything else that would reduce their taxable income. So during this time of the year with my clients, I will take a look at everything, and then not just what they earn this year, but also what they're projected to earn next year, and put things in place ahead of time to combat.
So what you were talking about stock options. Explain how that works. How does an executive use stock options to reduce their income?
Well, a lot of them will receive stock options from their company as a form of compensation. So there's a lot that goes into it, when it's exercised, how it's going to be taxed, and all that. So we would sit there and review all of that and put a plan in place. So when it is time to turn these stock options into stocks or just sell them, we're doing it from a position of knowing what the result will be, instead of
So an executive can get stock without having to report it as income?
Correct. It depends on how it's structured is a better answer. So
Okay.
They might receive it as restricted stock units. They might receive it as an option. And if it's an option, they have up until a certain time to exercise it. And that's when things may be reported. So they don't make it easy.
Okay. So you have to get you have to be pretty familiar with the corporate entity and know the workings of the corporate entity in order to be able to do that. And I assume that's what you do in your role as a CFP and a planner at Beechmont.
Yes.
So,
yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. When you're, what other things are you working with regard to this end of the year tax planning that maybe can lower tax brackets? What other things can you suggest?
The other big elephant in the room, right, is the Tax Cut Jobs Act that's set to sunset as the law stands, right? It's set to go away in 2025, and it's also taking a look at what you can do now to maximize that, so that come 2026, you're not left holding the bag. So some of that might be around like Roth conversions, where it doesn't necessarily lower your taxes now, but it may lower your taxes in the long run. So
Well,
it's
there was a Roth conversion you were saying?
yes.
How does that work? How does a Roth conversion work for an executive?
So it would work in the same light as anybody, right? So when you're looking at the taxes, for executives in particular, right now their taxes are lower than what they would be, assuming there's no legislation passed that might impact taxes to extend things. But as it stands right now, the individual tax rate is set to jump back up. Come
That's when if the Tax Relief Act expires.
Yes.
Okay. So the tax rate now is lower for income tax than it would be after it expires.
Correct.
And when is it set to expire?
End of next year.
End of next year. Okay. So there's a lot of things that are happening now with regard to information as well. That like FinCEN has requested everybody to declare the beneficial owners of corporations. What do you think about that?
I honestly, I don't think it's a bad thing. Personally, it's just a form that you file. It would have been. I feel like you already disclose that when you file with your state to incorporate within the state, and now it's just on the federal level.
Right, but they don't ask you when you file and create a corporation in the state. They don't ask you what you own, who the owners are. They're really not interested. At least in the state of Florida. Where are you located, Melody?
I'm in Ohio. So for mine, I had to list out all the owners, managers of the company of Beechmont, which.
Right. So government has been, there's a lot of things that we could talk about with regard to politics. I really don't want to get into the politics of it, but it is important in the sense that it's going to determine what may happen in the future with regard to tax policy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you're working with professionals and executives and you get to this time of the year, do you do any planning using any of the charitable devices, like a pooled income fund or charitable remainder trusts or donor advised funds? What are you finding most people are using today?
A lot of my clients use the donor advised funds because it is so flexible. Now, if you want to create like a charitable trust, things like that, you can easily do so with a lawyer, and there's all sorts of ways to get that set up. And the investment portion of it, I would help. But the majority of my clients just offer the donor advised funds because you don't have to select your charity now, but you get the tax benefit now.
Right. Assuming that they're doing more than the exclusion, or they're going to itemize. So,
right.
Yeah. Do you find that people are more willing today than they were like last year or the year before to do that kind of giving? Do you think that there's an impact that inflation has had on us? Are people as generous today as they were?
Not that I'm saying, and that's across the board. Only because, like you mentioned, right, inflation has impacted everybody. Of course, those who make less are impacted a lot more. But yes, I think everyone's just waiting to see what happens with the election and what the tax laws are going to look like before they start ramping up their charitable contributions again.
So you're a young lady in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
What made you become a CFP? Why did you choose this as a path, as a professional path?
Thank you for asking. So growing up, like a lot of Americans, I wasn't instilled with good financial sense, and a lot of us weren't. It's not taught in school, so a lot of our parents don't know. But I knew once I got into college, I was like, okay, I don't want to be the average American. I want to learn as much as I can. And I got into this world working at a local credit union um, under a financial advisor and then moving on to be a financial advisor myself almost a decade ago now. Um,
Mhm.
the thing I like about it is I love to solve problems.
Okay.
That's my thing. So when people would come to me and say, "Hey, here's my financial situation," my brain would go into, well, how can I add value? How can I make this better for them? Um,
Mhm.
and then that led me to getting my CFP, which was the best decision I ever made. Probably shouldn't say this, but if I had to do it over again, I'd do the CFP instead of going to college.
Well,
Because
it's interesting that you say that because I think there's a lot of young people out there that don't realize that they can go into fields that they don't need to go to college for.
Mhm.
And I think it's very important that people have that kind of awareness. Youngsters today just automatically think that the only way you're going to succeed in life is to go to college. Not that I'm not telling you not to go to college to do certain things, but we want to make sure that you're thinking through all the potential. And when you see the opportunity like this to become a CFP, do you find it hard because of your age to relate to some of the, older executives or, I remember when I started, I was 25 years old and I was thrust into a situation where I was dealing with an attorney who had the entire floor of a building
Oh my
and it
goodness.
was very intimidating. So I don't know whether you've experienced anything like that. Have you had that happen?
I feel like when I first started, it was more that. Now that I'm married, have kids, I feel like it's a lot easier to relate to people when they're
Yeah.
like, my kids, everyone's having kids later too. So when they're, telling you about how expensive daycare is, you're like, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. And my whole thing is like, I'm not in the business to get my clients, the most money they can ever make. My approach is more, well, what do we do about your finances where you can live the life you want to live today? So if that's maybe somebody wants to shift from full time to part time or take a sabbatical where they have a drop in income. Like, what can we do with your finances now where you're still on track to retire? What sacrifices do we have to make sure you're still on track and you get to do what you want to do now?
As part of the CFP, are you also you're not just dealing with retirement, obviously, right?
Right.
You deal with the whole gamut of exposures.
Yes.
So when you're dealing in the in other areas like property, do you go into property and casualty at all? The risks of losing property or being sued by third parties?
So I can't sell on it, but I do advise on it. So with all my clients, I'll ask them for their declaration pages, and I'm always surprised at the coverages I see. And I almost recommend everybody gets umbrella added on there, and of course that comes with increasing your liability as well. Yeah, but for my clients, I'll say if you have an agent you're working with, happy to talk to them and have them come up with a new quote, or I can shop what you really need and come back to you and then connect you with whoever it is you need to connect to get that policy.
Good.
Yeah.
Do you deal in life insurance and people dying too soon? Is that an issue as well?
No, I have the exact opposite problem where I feel like not a lot of people buy life insurance soon enough. And I always tell folks if you have anybody, relying on your income, get a term life at least. And then
Mhm.
don't worry about the whole life until you start amassing wealth where you think you might, there might be estate taxes in play. And then get the whole life to offset that for your heirs.
Okay. My guest is Melody Brady, the founder of Beechmont Financial. She's a CFP located in Ohio, and has an amazing outlook with regard to the level of how you can create things to work in the right way, how you can make it all work out based on what you have and what you need. How much of an effect do you think budgeting has on this? Do you actually start out with that as the concept to start where you're advising?
I don't necessarily start out with that, but I do take a look at, okay, well, how much are you saving? What does your debt look like? And for some clients, I do have to delve into that a little bit. And it's always eye opening for me as well as the clients sometimes of, how much am I spending eating out every month? Or how much are we spending going to Starbucks or what have you? And yes, I think that's where building wealth honestly starts, is knowing what you're doing with your money. And there's no judgment. If you want to spend X amount at Starbucks, go right ahead, but as long as you know about it.
I have a very unique story that I always tell, which is I was interviewing in my endowment engineering travels. I was interviewing a professional, and he said, I said, "What do you earn?" He said, "300,000." So I said, "What do you spend?" He says, "Probably about 7,000 a month, 8,000 a month." So I said, "Okay, you must be saving a lot of money." He said, "No, I'm not saving anything." And then when we went through his budget, people don't really focus that much on their budget to really look at what they are actually spending.
Right.
They kind of have numbers in their heads. I find it kind of shocking, almost in the sense that they don't have that realization of what they're actually. You find that to be true as well?
Yes, and it doesn't matter how much somebody makes.
Exactly. Doesn't make any difference if they're making $500,000 a year or $100,000 a year. People don't really pay attention to the budget. So do you use a budget form of some type that you force the people to do a budget, or what do you do?
I don't like the word force, but I will encourage them. Monarch Money is a good one, only because if you wanted to, you can share it with your advisor. They might not see your everyday transactions, but they can see your trends. So I'll do that for clients who ask for it. And then that way, we'll review it every quarter or every 6 months or whatever, however often we need to just focus on their budget to see if they're making, if they're going the right direction or not.
So if you're planning for the retirement, isn't the budget one of the most important things to see and get an idea of what they're spending?
Yes. And I feel like when you get closer to retirement, that's when it matters more. Because a lot of the stuff that, if somebody's in their 50s that they're spending money on now won't necessarily be the case in retirement. Like, for instance, you might not need to spend as much money on new clothes because you're not going to the office every day.
Right. And the kids may be grown and they're not having college to pay for and so on.
Exactly. But yes, no, definitely I encourage everybody to do the budget. So like I'll do a preliminary one, and then some people need more hand holding than others, and that's okay.
What's the role of disability in all of that?
A lot of people think that the disability insurance purchased through their employer benefits is enough, and they're usually surprised to find out that it's not. It is a hard sell because I feel like life insurance, everybody talks about it, but nobody really talks about disability. But I think that is extremely important. Because there's a chance, like, what if you get sick or get injured or what have you, and you can't do your job anymore, and now your income is greatly impacted, whether it's cut in half, or you don't get anything at all, depending on the type of disability insurance you have. And then now you're trying to make that up versus having private disability insurance.
Where once they get to the point where they have assets that could support them, I guess it takes a little bit more of a back seat.
Right.
But until that point, it's really important. People don't, without income, a lot of things stop. So, Melody, I really appreciate your time this morning with us here on Route 664, the Road to Human Kindness. And endowment engineering is what we think is the wave of the future. Added to the CFP is certainly something that you might want to consider, because we do use, other than donor advised funds, we use charitable remainder trust and pooled income funds, things like that, to help advisors become more, let's put it this, more adept at being able to work with those devices, because most people don't know that they exist. We call this Route 664 because we're trying to get the number 664 into the lexicon. In fact, we're creating a podcast channel, Discovery 664, which will be available soon when people be directed to that channel, and we'll have podcasts and things that will be relevant to the endowment engineering planning and so on. So hope that you'll join us again on Route 664, Road to Human Kindness, and we'd like to, share what we're doing with you, and vice versa. We're happy to promote your skill set. It's important for the country. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Melody. So we're going to take a short commercial break. We'll be right back.
Authors. You are going to start to uncover all the layers that are covering your genius. And some of the world's top leadership experts.
We have structured a mastermind program that is very unusual and it is very powerful.
Robin Sharma at noon. Your creativity will soar, your productivity will be epic, your impact will be legendary, you will be the best in the business, and you will not only achieve remarkable things, but you're going to feel sunsets. You'll feel a connection to people. You'll feel for what's going on in the world, and that will make you a world changer in your own unique way. Robin Sharma at noon at 4 p.m.
It's a
Blaine Bartlett
exploration of what it takes to be a highly effective leader in today's fast-changing environment.
Best-selling author, executive, and leadership coach.
And if you've been liking what you've been listening to on these Soul of Business podcasts, how does one become a leader that can keep connection to the soul of business?
Blaine Bartlett at 4 p.m.
Look forward to seeing you there.
At Route664.org. This is Route 664 Radio.
So it's really important for the public to be aware of the things that are available. And so Route 664 is a way for you to end up at human kindness, the road to human kindness. It's important that you think about your community, that you think about your family, that you think about yourself. And so the theory of social charity, which is the fundamental building block of the endowment engineering program, the theory of social charity is that 664 equals endowment squared, meaning that you use that section of the tax code and other sections like it to create endowment. And there's two endowments that you're creating. One first that you're going to live on for your lifetime, and then the endowment that you're going to leave behind. And some people want to leave the endowment that they're living on to the next person that they want to help as well. It's not that you have to stop. Endowment can be created to go more than one generation. It just depends on what your situation is. I always relate things to when somebody says to me, well, how do you do this? And how do you do that? And why would you do this? Why would you do that? And I, go back to, my wife Trish was learning how to play canasta, and she said, do you want to go with me? You want to learn? I said, sure. So we went to learn how to play the game. And, it's not that complicated a game, but it has its techniques, and it's all about sevens and aces and, melding and things like that. Anyway, so I would ask questions. Well, when do you do this? And when do you do that? And every time I would ask that, she would say the same thing. Depends on where you are in the game. And that's the same thing true here. It depends on where you are in the game. So there are situations right now, now that we're in tax season, what I call tax planning season, planning not to pay the tax and planning to reduce your taxes as much as possible. It's perfectly legal for you to do that. You don't have to pay the most that the law extracts. So you have an opportunity now at this time of the year, before December 31st, to do things to lower your taxes. Now, if you're not paying taxes, it doesn't make any difference. But if you're in a situation where let's say you have some appreciated real estate that you're want to get yourself out of the real estate business, you don't want to do a 1031 exchange, you want to use that you want to change the income that you're getting from the real estate to something that may generate more income or that more stable, where you don't have to do any management. So you may be in a position where you sold real estate this year, or you're going to sell real estate, and you're going to have a capital gain before the end of the year, and that will be a taxable gain, or your recaptured depreciation. Those are all factors that go into why people want to extricate themselves from the real estate business, including maintenance and management and so on. So if you're in that position where you're going to change real estate to something else, you need to understand that there's a way to do that using 664 or devices in the 664 category. So we have created a place for you to learn about that, and that's at the Discovery 664 Academy. And you can go online to see what you can learn about real estate transactions, Or if you have a stock transaction where you're going to have appreciated stock, the appreciated stock can be handled in a way other than using a donor advised fund. It can be done through a pooled income fund. It can be done through a charitable remainder trust. There are things that you can do to avoid the taxes, get a tax deduction, and that's all dependent on where you are in the game. Do you have stock that you think you've got a lot of profit, you don't think it's going to remain there, and you want to change it, or you're not getting income from it? Those are all situations where you can do that. So what's available to you on Discovery 664, the Academy, you can actually follow along and see blueprints that we have created for you to do these transactions to make it understandable for you. And you can get on right now at a fee of $49 to get on the site. And you can take all the courses that are on the site for the $49. It's $49 a month. We encourage you to stay involved in the Academy learning process because there are things that will enable you to reduce your taxes and do some better planning for yourself. It is an adjunct to your own advisors. It is not a replacement for your advisors. It's just something that you need to be aware of. If you don't take care of something because you don't know about it, you don't take advantage of something because you don't know about it, that's fine. If you know about it and don't want to take advantage of it, that's a different thing entirely. And so we want you to be aware that these things exist. And that's a part of the process of education that we are embarked on with regard to creating endowment. Our objective at Endow America is to do that, to endow America. We want to create a change, an important change, to go from 35 trillion in debt, or 36 trillion in debt, whatever it is now, to 36 trillion or 35 trillion in endowment. And that's very possible. Unfortunately, it wasn't started back in 1969 when these things were given to us. We would be in a much different position today in all of our communities. Every community could possibly have its own free hospital, its own free daycare center. All those things could have been done where it's available to the public for free because it's been endowed by the same community, by the people in the community who have left behind an endowment. The reason we use the term social security, the theory of social security, that is close to Social Security, and it's very similar to Social Security. Social Security is also given to you by the government. It was based on laws that were passed in 1969. And it is a way for you to accumulate money in an endowment for your income in the future, because that's all Social Security is. Social Security is an endowment that you're creating through the government process. You're taking money is being taken from your pay, or your whether you're an independent contractor, you have to pay your Social Security tax based on what you earn. Your employer contributes, and it's mandatory. And that is creating an endowment. What it will be when you reach retirement to take advantage of the endowment income, it will depend on how much you've put in, how long you've worked, and so on. But that is an endowment. Now, the thing about that endowment is when you pass on, if you're not married and if you reach retirement age in one day and you pass, all of that capital that you put into that endowment fund just is distributed by the government, and you're left with $255 to bury yourself. That's the process. So now we're talking about creating a different kind of an endowment, one where you build it your entire lifetime. It can be as big as you want. You can also contribute non-cash assets to it, and you can make the endowment as big as you want. But when you pass on, you direct where it goes into the community. That's why we call it Endowment Squared. Thank you for joining us today on Route 664, the Road to Human Kindness. And we are with you every week right here on the Community News. And we'll see you again next week. That's the show for today, folks.
Once upon a time, in a town quite grand, lived Eleanor with a sharp mind and a steady hand. She had an eye for detail, numbers were her game, and as she neared life's twilight, she sought lasting fame. One day, fate smiled with a windfall so bright. Eleanor saw a chance to set things right. She found Section 664, a tax code so rare. But for Kratz and Krutz, you're gonna need an engineer, an endowment engineer, savvy and wise. She crafted a plan, a legacy in disguise, a trust for her grand-twins, income to provide. But with a twist, they must serve, and must they, with pride. The twins took the challenge, and they ran with glee, establishing a center, a place for all to see. For animals and seniors, a haven of care, a place where love and kindness would flourish with flair. So remember, dear friends, as you navigate life, social security can ease your strife. With a heart full of giving and a mind so keen, you too can create a legacy unseen. Plan, prosper, pass on. That's the power of 664.